The detention facility on Outpost Theta 9 was supposed to be temporary. Commander Voktar of the Krellian Imperium stood before the reinforced observation window, his 4 eyes narrowing as he studied the peculiar scene below. Inside the cell, a human child no more than 8 rotations old by their species standards sat cross-legged on the metal floor. Beside the child lay a creature that defied all military protocol. A honey badger. Commander. Lieutenant Threshik approached cautiously, his neck ridges flaring with concern. The prisoner refuses to cooperate. She won't eat, won't speak, and that animal, I can see the animal, Lieutenant. Voktar's voice carried the weight of 17 campaigns across 12 star systems. He'd faced down rebellions, conquered fortress worlds, and negotiated the surrender of entire fleets. Yet here he stood, genuinely puzzled by a small human, and her even smaller companion, the child designated as Prisoner 447 Alpha in their systems. Glanced up at the window. She couldn't see through the one-way barrier, but somehow, Voktar felt the weight of her gaze anyway. Her name, according to the manifest, was Lily Vaughn. Captured 3 cycles ago during a raid on a human agricultural colony. Intel suggested her parents were part of the resistance. The child was leverage, nothing more. The honey badger, however, had not been part of the plan. Sir, perhaps we should discuss the complications. Threshik pulled up a holographic display, his claws trembling slightly. The creature has injured 4 guards, severely. Private Zenlo lost 2 fingers. Sergeant Mokhtar required extensive dermal regeneration after trying to separate it from the child. Yes, I read the reports. Voktar turned away from the window, his battle armor humming softly. Tell me, Lieutenant, how does an animal roughly the size of a small torso manage to terrorize trained soldiers? Threshik's silence was answer enough. The commander returned his attention to the cell. The honey badger, the child called it Bandit, according to surveillance, was grooming itself with disturbing nonchalance. Its black and white fur seemed almost comical against the sterile gray walls. Its eyes, however, told a different story. Those eyes held something Voktar had seen countless times in war. Absolute, unwavering defiance. Commander. The door hissed open and Captain Zorvan strode in, his ceremonial armor gleaming. High Command has issued new orders. The human resistance has been more troublesome than anticipated in Sector 7. They're demanding we execute the prisoner as a demonstration of Imperial authority. Voktar's mandibles clicked softly, a gesture of mild irritation. Execute a child? Execute leverage that has proven ineffective. Zorvan's tone was matter-of-fact, clinical. The parents haven't responded to our demands. The resistance grows bolder. High Command believes a strong message is necessary. And the animal? Dispose of it first. Quickly. Without the creature, the child will be easier to manage. Voktar studied his superior officer. Zorvan had 3 distinguished service medals and 0 field experience. He commanded from behind desks, pushing digital markers across holographic battlefields while real soldiers bled in the dirt. The type who saw war as mathematics rather than horror. You want me to kill the honey badger? Voktar repeated slowly, as if testing the words for hidden meaning. Is there a problem, Commander? Zorvan's head crest rose slightly. A challenge. Sir, with respect, every attempt to even approach that creature has resulted in casualties. It's small, yes, but it's a non-sentient animal from a backwater planet, Commander. Use weapons. Use gas. Use whatever is necessary. I want it eliminated within the hour, and I want the child prepared for public execution by morning cycle. Am I clear? Voktar's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. Left. To right. A Krellian expression of resignation. Crystal clear, Captain. As Zorvan departed, Threshik moved closer to his commander. Sir, if I may speak freely, when has protocol ever stopped you, old friend? The lieutenant's mandibles twitched almost a smile. I think this is a remarkably terrible idea. Noted. Assemble a security team. Non-lethal weapons first. Let's try to maintain some dignity here. Dignity, sir. Against a honey badger, Lieutenant. We'll need all we can muster. 20 minutes later, a 6-soldier team stood outside the cell door. Each was armed with stun batons, neural disruptors, and enough body armor to stop plasma fire. They looked like they were preparing to storm a fortified bunker, not enter a room containing a small human child and a medium-sized mammal. Voktar watched from the observation deck, arms crossed. This felt wrong on multiple levels, but orders were orders. The Empire didn't ask for moral quandaries. It demanded obedience. On my mark, Sergeant Krevoth commanded, his voice steady despite the nervous flicking of his tail. Remember, target the animal first, immobilize it, then extract the prisoner. 3, 2, 1. Breach. The door slid open with a hydraulic hiss. For exactly 2 seconds, nothing happened. Lily Vaughn looked up from her seated position, her expression completely neutral. Bandit stopped grooming and swiveled his wedge-shaped head toward the soldiers. His beady eyes seemed to calculate distances, trajectories, and weak points in armor with predatory precision. Then, chaos. Bandit moved like liquid violence. He crossed the 5-meter distance to the nearest soldier in less than a heartbeat, launching himself at Private Hektar's faceplate. The soldier screamed, actually screamed, as the honey badger's claws found purchase on his helmet, scratching and scraping with sounds that made Voktar's skin crawl. Stun him. Stun the thing, Krevoth shouted. But Hektar was spinning wildly, trying to dislodge the creature while his teammates struggled to get a clear shot. Soldier 2, Corporal Jixon, made the mistake of grabbing Bandit's hindquarters. The honey badger twisted an impossible, spine-breaking twist that no vertebrate should have been able to perform and sank his teeth into the corporal's wrist guard. Through the armor, alarms blared as the suit's integrity was compromised. Jixon howled, shaking his arm, but Bandit held on like a furry vice. Private Vexla fired her neural disruptor. The blue energy bolt struck Bandit directly in the chest. The creature absorbed the blast, shook himself once as if annoyed by a minor inconvenience, and launched himself at Vexla's throat. She went down hard, armor clanking, screaming in a pitch that Voktar didn't know Krellians could reach. Fall back, Krevoth commanded. Fall back now. But Bandit wasn't done. The honey badger ricocheted between soldiers like a pinball of pure aggression. He bit Soldier 4's tail. He clawed Soldier 5's faceplate until the polarized glass cracked. He climbed Soldier 6 like a tree and delivered a series of rapid strikes to the back of the neck, the one spot where Krellian armor had a joint seam. In under 30 seconds, 6 trained soldiers retreated in complete disarray, leaving trails of green blood and shattered dignity. Lily Vaughn hadn't moved. As the door sealed shut again, she reached out calmly and scratched Bandit behind his ears. The creature's aggressive posture melted instantly. He climbed into her lap, circled twice, and settled down with a contented grunt. The girl looked up at the observation window again. This time, she smiled. It wasn't a cruel smile, or a mocking smile. It was the smile of someone who knew a secret, the kind of knowing that came from experience rather than years. She mouthed 3 words, slowly and deliberately, so that even through the soundproof barrier, Voktar could read her lips. Go on. Try. In the medical bay, Voktar surveyed the damage. 6 soldiers in various states of injury. Hektar's faceplate had deep gouges. Jixon's wrist was bandaged and splinted. Vexla was being treated for lacerations across her neck, armor lacerations that had somehow found every gap, every weakness in Imperial Standard Issue battle gear. Commander, the medical officer, a thin Krellian named Dr. Pixeth, approached with a data pad. I've analyzed the attack patterns. That creature targeted vulnerabilities with surgical precision. Joint seams, helmet clasps, weak points in the polymer weave. It's almost as if it understands our armor. Voktar finished. Impossible. It's an animal. An animal from Earth, sir. I took the liberty of accessing the xenobiology database. Dr. Pixeth pulled up holographic images of honey badgers in various environments. Mellivora capensis, known colloquially as the honey badger or ratel, native to Africa, parts of Asia. They're listed as fearless omnivores with loose skin, that prevents successful bites from predators. They regularly fight animals 3 times their size. They've been documented attacking lions, hyenas, even Cape buffalo. Documented? By humans, sir. Extensively. There are countless visual recordings. The humans find the creatures amusing, admirable, even. There's an entire subcategory of human internet culture dedicated to celebrating the honey badger's aggressive nature. Voktar's head crest flattened in what could only be described as disbelief. They celebrate this? Enthusiastically, sir. The most common human phrase associated with the species is, quote, "Honey badger don't care." It's a statement of respect for the animal's complete indifference to danger, convention, or self-preservation. That, Voktar said slowly, explains an uncomfortable amount. Lieutenant Threshik entered the medical bay, his armor still scorched from the earlier encounter. "Commander, Captain Zorven is demanding an update. He wants to know why the animal is still alive. Tell the captain that we're reassessing our tactical approach." "Sir, with respect, I don't think tactics will help. That creature doesn't follow normal threat response patterns. It doesn't retreat when injured. It doesn't acknowledge superior numbers. It just attacks," Voktar finished. "Yes, I noticed. So what do we do?" The commander was silent for a long moment, his 4 eyes unfocused, processing. In 17 campaigns, he'd learned that some battles couldn't be won through direct confrontation. Some enemies required finesse, understanding, even negotiation. But this wasn't a sentient opponent. This was an animal defending a child. Or was it? "Dr. Pixeth, show me the database entry on human-animal relationships." The medical officer's claws tapped across the datapad, pulling up files. "Humans have a unique capacity for cross-species bonding, sir. They domesticate predators, keep them as companions, form emotional attachments that sometimes supersede their own safety. Dogs, cats, horses, the list is extensive. But here's something interesting. Honey badgers aren't typically domesticated. They're wild animals, largely untrainable by human standards. And yet," Voktar gestured toward the observation screen, where Lily still sat peacefully with Bandit in her lap. "And yet," Dr. Pixeth agreed, "that child has somehow formed a bond with one of Earth's most notoriously antisocial creatures. The psychological implications are fascinating. The creature isn't protecting territory or food. It's protecting her. Specifically her. Which means killing it won't be simple." "Sir," Threshik interjected, "Captain Zorven is threatening to come down here personally to oversee the execution." "Both executions." Voktar's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of decision-making. "Then we'd better move quickly. Lieutenant, I need you to access the human resistance communication channels. Quietly. Use back channels. Nothing that command will trace." "Sir, we're going to try something radical, Threshik. We're going to think like humans." "That sounds dangerous, sir." "Probably. But fighting honey badgers head-on hasn't worked out well either." 3 hours later, Voktar stood alone outside the cell door. No weapons, no armor, just his standard uniform. Behind him, Threshik monitored from the observation deck, one claw hovering over the emergency lockdown switch. "This is insane," the lieutenant's voice crackled through the comm. "She's a child. But that thing will attack me the moment I enter." "I know." Voktar took a breath, his 3 lungs expanding in sequence. "But maybe that's not the point." "What is the point, sir?" "Respect, Lieutenant. Something I should have considered from the beginning." He keyed the door open. Lily looked up, her expression shifting from neutral to guarded. Bandit's head snapped toward the entrance, muscles coiling, teeth baring slightly. The honey badger's entire body, language screamed one message: "Come closer and find out what pain feels like." Voktar stepped inside. The door sealed behind him with a finality that made his skin prickle. "Hello, Lily Vaughn," he said, keeping his voice calm, conversational. "My name is Commander Voktar. I'm sorry we couldn't meet under better circumstances." The girl didn't respond, but her eyes tracked his every movement. "I wanted to talk to you about Bandit." He nodded toward the honey badger. which was now standing on all fours, positioned between Voktar and the child. He's very protective of you. Still nothing. But her hand moved to rest gently on Bandit's back. A subtle gesture of connection. You know, I've fought in 17 major campaigns, Voktar continued, slowly lowering himself to sit cross-legged on the floor, mirroring the girl's position but maintaining distance. I've seen weapons that could crack planets, ships that could blot out stars, soldiers who could tear through reinforced bunkers, like paper. But in all that time, across all those battles, I've never encountered anything quite like your friend here. A flicker of something pride maybe crossed Lily's face. My superiors want me to kill him, then kill you. They say it's necessary, that it will send a message to your people, to the resistance. They believe that fear and violence are the only languages that matter in war. Voktar paused, choosing his next words carefully. But here's what I think. I think the reason your people fight so hard, the reason you resist even when the odds are impossible, isn't because you're stronger or better armed. It's because you refuse to abandon each other. You form bonds that transcend logic. A child and a wild animal who should, by all reasonable analysis, be incompatible. Yet here you sit, together, facing down an empire, utterly unafraid. Lily's lips moved. Barely audible, but Voktar's hearing was acute enough to catch the words. We're not unafraid. He leaned forward, slightly, careful not to trigger Bandit's defensive response. No? Afraid means you understand danger, means you're smart enough to know when things are bad. Her voice was steady, older than her years. We're afraid. We're just not letting fear win. That, Voktar said softly, is perhaps the bravest thing I've ever heard. Bandit's aggressive posture relaxed, just slightly. Still alert, still ready, but no longer coiled to strike. I contacted the resistance, Voktar continued. Your parents. They're alive, by the way, leading a cell in Sector 7. They've been trying to locate you since the raid. Lily's eyes widened, the first genuine emotional reaction he'd seen from her. I'm not supposed to tell you that. I'm certainly not supposed to be considering what I'm about to do next. But watching your friend take down 6 trained soldiers without hesitation made me realize something important. What? That some things are worth protecting, regardless of orders. Regardless of immense consequences. Your parents understand that. You understand that. Even Bandit, the honey badger's ears perked up at his name. Even Bandit understands that. So what happens now? Lily asked, her hand still resting protectively on the animal's back. Voktar stood slowly, his movements deliberate and non-threatening. Now I'm going to do something that will probably end my career and quite possibly my life. I'm going to let you go. The silence that followed Voktar's declaration stretched like a taut wire. Lily stared at him, her small face a mixture of hope and suspicion. Bandit's dark eyes remained fixed on the commander, calculating, waiting for the inevitable betrayal that experience had taught all captured creatures to expect. Why? The word came out barely above a whisper, but it carried the weight of every broken promise the child had ever witnessed. Voktar moved toward the cell's control panel, his movements slow and deliberate. Because I've spent 17 campaigns conquering worlds, and I'm tired of pretending it makes us civilized. Because watching an 8-year-old refuse to break while trained soldiers panic taught me more about courage than any medal ceremony. Because, he paused, claws hovering over the interface. Because that honey badger looked at me like he knew exactly what I was, and he wasn't impressed. A sound emerged from Lily, half laugh, half sob. Bandit's not impressed by much. Clearly. Voktar keyed in his command codes, overriding the cell's security protocols. Red warning lights flickered across the panel. Listen carefully. The ventilation shaft in the north corner leads to the maintenance tunnels, 300 meters straight, then turn left at the junction. You'll find an access ladder that goes down to the hangar level. Bay 12 has a courier ship that I've pre-programmed for autopilot. It'll take you to the coordinates I'm transmitting now, a neutral trading station where resistance sympathizers operate. You're just letting us walk out? Suspicion sharpened her voice. Not exactly. In approximately 4 minutes, I'm going to trigger a security alert claiming you overpowered me. My injuries will be superficial but convincing. You'll have a 10-minute head start before actual pursuit begins. After that, you're on your own." Lily stood, Bandit immediately pressing against her leg. "What about you?" "Court-martial, most likely. Possibly execution for treason. Definitely the end of my military career." He smiled, an expression that didn't translate well across species but conveyed resignation. "Strangely, I'm more at peace with this decision than any I've made in years." The girl crossed the cell quickly, stopping just within arm's reach. She studied him with those two old eyes, searching for deception. Then, apparently satisfied, she extended her hand in the human gesture of agreement and gratitude. Voktar clasped it gently, mindful of his strength against her fragility. "Thank you, Commander. Survive, Lily Vaughn. Make this betrayal mean something." She nodded once, then moved toward the ventilation panel. Bandit followed, but paused at the threshold to look back at Voktar. The honey badger's expression, if such a creature could be said to have expressions, seemed almost approving. A warrior recognizing another warrior, regardless of species or circumstance. Then, they were gone, disappearing into the narrow shaft with surprising agility. Voktar waited exactly 30 seconds before triggering his comm. "Code Black. Code Black. Prisoner 447 Alpha has escaped. I'm injured. Multiple lacerations. The animal attacked. Send security to detention level immediately." He then proceeded to slam himself against the wall hard enough to draw blood, rake his own claws across his arm guards, and overturn the cell's furniture. By the time Threshik burst through the door with a security team, the scene looked convincingly violent. "Commander, are you the honey badger?" Voktar gasped, clutching his arm dramatically. "It went for my throat." The child slipped past while I was defending myself. They headed toward the south corridor. South was opposite the direction he'd actually sent them. It would buy precious minutes. Threshik's eyes narrowed slightly. The lieutenant knew him too well, but he played along. "Medical team to detention level. Security. Seal all southern exits and begin systematic sweeps." As chaos erupted around him, Voktar allowed himself a small, private smile. Sometimes the most significant victories had nothing to do with winning battles. Captain Zorvan arrived 14 minutes later, his ceremonial armor gleaming with barely contained fury. "Explain." "Now." Voktar, now bandaged and sitting in the medical bay, maintained his fabricated story. "The creature was more dangerous than anticipated, sir. When I attempted to enter the cell for preliminary termination protocols, it attacked with unexpected ferocity. The child exploited the distraction to flee. You, Commander Voktar, decorated veteran of 17 campaigns, were bested by a child and an animal the size of a cargo container." Zorvan's crest flared dangerously. "Do you understand how that sounds?" "I understand it sounds improbable, sir. I also understand that 6 soldiers before me suffered similar outcomes. Perhaps High Command underestimated the threat level." Zorvan's mandibles clicked rapidly, anger, frustration, suspicion, all warring across his features. "Security footage. Show me the security footage." Dr. Pixeth stepped forward nervously. "Sir, there's a complication. The cell's surveillance system experienced a malfunction approximately 3 minutes before the incident. Some kind of power fluctuation. We only have audio from the corridor, which captured sounds of struggle and the commander's distress call." "Convenient," Zorvan said flatly. "Remarkably convenient." "Faulty equipment is hardly convenient, sir," Voktar interjected. "It's a liability that should be reported to maintenance. These older outposts have persistent infrastructure problems." The captain circled him slowly, looking for cracks in the story. "The Resistance will use this escape as propaganda. Mighty Krellian Empire defeated by human child. Our reputation in this sector will suffer. Then we should recapture her quickly and eliminate that narrative." "Oh, we will, Commander. And when we do, you'll personally oversee her execution. Then we'll examine this incident more thoroughly. If I discover you allowed this escape, if I find even a shred of evidence suggesting complicity," he leaned close, his breath hot against Voktar's face. "You'll wish the honey badger had finished you." "Understood, sir." Zorvan stormed out, barking orders at subordinates. Security teams mobilized, ships launched, sensors swept the surrounding space for any sign of the courier vessel. They wouldn't find it. Voktar had routed it through an asteroid field that would scramble tracking signatures and programmed a false trajectory that led toward abandoned mining colonies. By the time pursuit corrected course, Lily and Bandit would be long gone. Threshik approached once the room cleared, his voice barely audible. "The surveillance system didn't malfunction, did it?" "Equipment failures happen, Lieutenant. Especially in older facilities with insufficient maintenance budgets. And you wouldn't know anything about, say, someone with command-level access disabling specific camera feeds." Voktar met his old friend's gaze steadily. "I wouldn't know anything about that at all." Threshik's mandibles twitched that almost smile again. "Sir, I've served under you for 11 years. Followed you through battles that should have killed us both. If you're going down for this, I want you to know." He paused, choosing words carefully. "I want you to know that some orders deserve to be disobeyed." "Careful, Lieutenant. That sounds dangerously close to sedition." "Yes, sir, it does." They stood in comfortable silence, two soldiers who'd seen too much war to believe in simple morality anymore. Sometimes the right choice wasn't the heroic one. Sometimes it was just the choice that let you sleep at night. 5 days later, High Command summoned Voktar for formal inquiry. He stood before a tribunal of 7 high-ranking officers, their collective judgment pressing down like gravity. The proceedings were clinical, methodical, designed to strip away pretense and expose truth. Captain Zorvan presented his case with prosecutorial precision. The evidence suggests gross negligence at minimum, possible treason at maximum. Commander Voktar's distinguished record cannot excuse the catastrophic failure of allowing a high-value prisoner to escape. Evidence was presented: testimony from the injured guards, analysis of the damaged cell, reports of the subsequent fruitless search. The tribunal examined every detail, searching for inconsistencies. Admiral Kex Thor, a scarred veteran with more years of service than Voktar had been alive, led the questioning. "Commander, you claim the animal overpowered you. Yet you've defeated opponents twice your size in hand-to-hand combat. You've survived ambushes, boarding actions, assassination attempts. How does a creature weighing perhaps 10 kilograms pose such a threat?" Voktar stood straight, accepting the scrutiny. "Sir, the honey badger doesn't fight like conventional opponents. It has no fear response, no self-preservation instinct. It attacks vulnerabilities with precision that suggests intelligence far beyond typical animal behavior. Combined with anatomical advantages, loose skin that prevents grip, powerful jaws, aggressive temperament, it becomes a threat disproportionate to its size." "So you're saying," another tribunal member interjected, "that this creature is simply too dangerous for Krellian soldiers to handle?" "I'm saying we underestimated it, sir. And in war, underestimation kills." Admiral Kex Thor's eyes, all 4 of them, studied Voktar with uncomfortable intensity. "Or perhaps we underestimate humans. Their capacity for resistance, their refusal to surrender even when logic demands it, their ability to inspire loyalty in the strangest places. Tell me, Commander, what do you think of the humans we're fighting?" The question hung in the air, loaded with implications. Voktar chose his words carefully. "I think they're more dangerous than our initial assessments suggested, sir. Not because of their technology or their tactics, but because of something less quantifiable. They form bonds that defy survival instinct. They protect each other beyond rational calculation. A child and a wild animal, united against an empire, refusing to surrender. That kind of resistance can't be conquered by firepower alone." "Is that admiration I hear, Commander?" "It's observation, sir. The Imperium has conquered countless species. Most surrender when defeat becomes inevitable. Humans don't. They escalate. They adapt. They find allies in impossible places. Ignoring that reality doesn't make us stronger. It makes us vulnerable." Zorvan exploded. "This is exactly the kind of defeatist thinking that led to the escape. The commander has been compromised by exposure to human psychology. But Admiral Kexthor raised a hand, silencing the outburst. Captain, contain yourself. The tribunal will determine fault, not your wounded pride. The proceeding continued for hours. Testimony, cross-examination, deliberation. Through it all, Voktar maintained his story, never wavering, never admitting intentional sabotage. He'd been bested in combat. It happened, even to decorated commanders. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the tribunal reached a verdict. Commander Voktar, Admiral Kexthor announced, this tribunal finds you guilty of negligence in prisoner supervision. However, given your exemplary service record and the unusual circumstances, we are issuing a formal reprimand rather than court-martial. You will be demoted 1 rank, reassigned to administrative duties, and barred from field operations for 2 standard cycles. Relief and disappointment warred in Voktar's chest. Not the outcome he'd expected, but better than execution. Furthermore, the Admiral continued, you will prepare a comprehensive report on human resistance psychology and the tactical implications of human-animal bonding behaviors. Your observations, while concerning in their implications, may prove valuable for future operations. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. As the tribunal dismissed, Admiral Kexthor lingered. Once they were alone, he spoke quietly. That was quite a performance, Commander. Voktar's blood chilled. Sir, I've been doing this for 40 years. I know when a soldier is lying. The Admiral's expression was unreadable. I also know when a soldier makes a choice that costs them everything for reasons they believe in. The question is, was your choice about the child, or about something larger? There was no point in denying it, not to someone who'd already seen through the facade. Both, sir. The child deserved better than to be a pawn. And we deserved better than to become the kind of empire that executes children for propaganda. Kexthor was silent for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, he nodded. You're right. We do deserve better. But change comes slowly, Commander, and often at great personal cost. Keep your head down. Serve your punishment. And maybe, just maybe, you'll live long enough to see a different kind of Imperium. And if I don't, sir, then at least you'll die knowing you stood for something beyond orders. 3 months later, Voktar sat in his new office, smaller, quieter, infinitely less prestigious than his command post. Administrative work meant reviewing reports, analyzing data, making recommendations that others would implement. It was boring, frustrating, and exactly what he deserved for betraying the Imperium. It was also, strangely, the most peaceful he'd felt in years. Threshik visited regularly, bringing news from the field. The resistance in Sector 7 had intensified operations. Several Imperial outposts had fallen. Morale among occupation forces was declining. High command was scrambling to adapt strategies. They're calling it the honey badger effect, Threshik reported one evening, his tone amused despite the serious subject matter. Human forces have adopted the honey badger as an unofficial symbol. Images of the creature appear on propaganda, on armor, even tattooed on resistance fighters. They're saying if a child and an animal could defeat Krellian soldiers, then anyone can resist the Imperium. Voktar couldn't help but laugh. One escape creates an entire movement. I'm not sure if that's inspiring or terrifying. Both, probably. Like most things involving humans. Threshik paused. There's something else. A message came through resistance channels. Anonymous, encrypted. But it made its way to me through unconventional routing. He handed over a data chip. Voktar inserted it into his terminal, and a video file appeared. The image was grainy, clearly recorded on portable equipment, but unmistakable. Lily Vaughn stood in what looked like a resistance safe house, Bandit at her feet. Behind her, two adults, presumably her parents, watched with expressions of fierce pride and profound relief. Commander Voktar, Lily said, looking directly into the camera. I don't know if this will reach you, or if you even want to hear from me, but I wanted you to know we made it. My parents found us at the trading station, just like you planned. Bandit is doing great, he bit 3 more people, but they deserved it. A smile flickered across her face, then sobered. What you did, you didn't have to do that. You could have followed orders. Instead, you chose something harder, something that cost you everything. I'm 8 years old, but I understand what sacrifice means. My parents taught me. You taught me. Even Bandit, in his own weird way, teaches me every day. She reached down to scratch the honey badger's ears. The creature leaned into her touch. Content. The resistance is spreading your story. Not as propaganda, but as truth. There are good people in the Imperium. People who question orders. People who choose compassion over convenience. That gives us hope. Not just hope that we'll win, but hope that when this war finally ends, both our species can find something better than endless fighting. Lily straightened, her young face suddenly looking far older than 8 years should allow. So thank you, Commander, for seeing me as a person, not a prisoner. For respecting Bandit instead of just fearing him. For proving that honor exists even in empires built on conquest. We won't forget. And someday, when this is over, I hope we meet. Again under better circumstances. Maybe you can actually pet Bandit without him trying to remove your fingers. The video ended. Voktar sat in silence, processing. Somewhere out there, a child he'd saved was living free, fighting alongside her parents, inspiring resistance across an entire sector. The ripples of that one choice spread farther than he could have imagined. Sir? Threshik ventured. Are you all right? I think, Voktar said slowly, I might have just witnessed the beginning of the end. Not of the war that will take years, maybe decades, but the end of believing that power alone determines righteousness. The end of following orders without question. The end of empires that crush children and call it necessity. That's a dangerous thought, sir. All the best thoughts are. They sat together in the quiet office. Two soldiers contemplating futures neither had been trained to imagine. Outside, the Imperium continued its campaigns, its conquests, its inexorable march across the stars. But inside, in the small spaces where individuals made choices that mattered, change was already taking root. Somewhere in Sector 7, a child and a honey badger were teaching an empire about courage. And in a forgotten administrative office, a disgraced commander was learning that sometimes the greatest victories looked nothing like triumph. Sometimes they looked like letting go. Sometimes they looked like a small hand in yours, trusting you to choose correctly. Sometimes they looked like a honey badger's approving stare, acknowledging that you'd finally understood what true ferocity meant, not violence for violence's sake, but unwavering protection of what mattered most. The war would continue. Battles would be won and lost. Empires would rise and fall. But in the end, the universe didn't remember who had the biggest ships or the most powerful weapons. It remembered who stood up when everything demanded they bow down. It remembered who protected the vulnerable when orders demanded they become executioners. It remembered who looked at impossible odds at children and animals facing down entire empires and said, "You know what? I'm going to bet on them instead." Voktar smiled, filed away the message, and returned to his paperwork. Administrative duties were boring, but they gave him time to think, to plan, to consider what came next, because this story wasn't over. It was just beginning. And honey badgers, as the humans like to say, don't care about endings.